Stay connected, stay informed. 20 minutes of nonstop news continues on KOMO News 1000, FM 97.7.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the KOMO Afternoon News. Downtown Seattle, we have 64 cloudy degrees, and our KOMO News time now 3:02.
I'm Elisa Jaffe with Rick Van Sice, and here's what's happening.
I'm Ryan Harris. Waning COVID immunity is on the minds of the team at UW Medicine, and not just in the months after you've been vaccinated. Dr. Ali Makdad says they're also looking at cross-variant immunity, how much protection you have from one variant after infection by another.
Cross-variant immunity is also declining with every new variant.
In just a few minutes, I'll have more from Dr. Makdad on that and his concerns as schools prepare to reopen.
The federal government extending restrictions on non-essential travel from Canada and Mexico until September 21st. The Department of Homeland Security citing the coronavirus Delta variant. The U.S. has limited non-essential travel since the COVID-19 pandemic started. The restrictions do not apply to cross-border trade. Fully vaccinated U.S. citizens are allowed to travel into Canada.
I'm Charlie Harger, watching the race for Seattle City Attorney. Paul Query runs the Washington Observer website on Substack.com.
It's really shaping up as one of the starkest contrasts we're likely to see in a long time in Seattle politics.
He tells KOMO candidate Nicole Thomas Kennedy calls herself an abolitionist. Candidate Ann Davison ran as a Republican for office last year. Query says this is a quiet time in the election cycle, with things likely to pick up significantly after Labor Day.
The controversial deletion of Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan's text messages was due to a deliberate act, according to City Attorney Pete Holmes. The mayor's office initially explained the messages regarding last year's racial justice protests disappeared due to an unknown technical issue. Later, the office admitted the mayor's phone had been set to auto-delete. Holmes tells the Seattle Times he warned the mayor's office not to blame an unknown issue. Holmes says he stressed to them changing the phone settings to auto-delete was a, quote, deliberate act.
Bellevue-based T-Mobile confirming 5.3 million more customers had their data stolen in a recent hack. That's in addition to the 7.8 million subscribers impacted in a hack several days ago. The company says device information numbers were stolen for some subscribers, and also possible names, phone numbers, and social security numbers were included in the hack. T-Mobile says no credit card or other financial information appears to have been stolen. Still ahead.
Forced to get the COVID-19 vaccine, she may leave the teaching profession. I'm Carlene Johnson.
KOMO News time 3:04. Time for a check on our traffic conditions on this Friday afternoon from the Dubin Law Group Traffic Center. Here's Marina Rockinger.
Westbound 520 just east of I-5, we have a disabled vehicle blocking the right lane, so that is starting to cause a backup coming off the bridge. Southbound I-5 is solid from Northgate into Seattle. Southbound 405 really struggling from 520 through Bellevue to 30th. Northbound I-5 is bumper to bumper from the Boeing Freeway to the Snohomish River. Southbound I-5 is heavy in Federal Way from 320th to Highway 18, where it becomes solid traffic down to the Puyallup River. Northbound I-5 is also solid from 38th to the Puyallup River. Eastbound 18 is a slow go from Weyerhaeuser to C Street in Auburn. Southbound 167 slow from Highway 18 down to Ellingson, and again from 24th into Puyallup. Southbound I-5 heavy at JBLM from Gravelly Lake Drive to Main Gate. Next, KOMO traffic at 3:14.
And this traffic update sponsored by Beacon Plumbing, Heating, and Electrical. Call Beacon today and save $50 on all electrical work. Just call 1-800-FREAKIN' and stop freaking. Call on Beacon. Theron's on. A closer look at our weather going into the weekend.
For your afternoon around Western Washington, mostly cloudy skies, upper 60s to lower 70s, slight chance of a sprinkle out there. Same story on, say, Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures in the same range under fairly gray skies. Certainly a cooler weekend than what we've been experiencing lately. In the KOMO Weather Center, Theron's on KOMO News.
Boy, Lisa, that's an understatement. It's 64 degrees here at Seattle Center, SeaTac Airport. 63, and you're in the middle of 20 minutes of nonstop news on KOMO at 3:06.
Downright chilly, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Warning immunity against COVID. Schools about to open and more large events on the horizon have some local public health experts a bit worried. KOMO's Ryan Harris with the details.
There are a few different ways to look at waning COVID immunity, according to my pandemic guru, Dr. Ali Makdad with UW's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. There is, of course, diminishing immunity in the time after you're infected. Then Dr. Makdad says there's reduced protection from the vaccines. And while he says they help your body to remember how to produce antibodies if you are infected, he reminds me the clinical trials were done at a time when we were well behaved, staying at home and wearing masks.
The trial did not happen today or at the time in our summer where everybody is out. Then the effectiveness would have been much lower simply because people are interacting with each other. That's epidemiology 101. Now people are not as careful, and then we should do the trial right now and figure out what's happening. So part of the decline in effectiveness of the vaccine is not that the vaccine itself. Part of it is the fact that we tried it at a different time. You try an umbrella in the sun, it works. You try it when it's raining so heavy. No, that's a totally different finding. The effectiveness varies. So that's what we are dealing with.
Then Dr. Mokdad says there's immunity from cross-variant infection. In other words, how much protection you'll get from one variant like Alpha when another like Delta comes along.
And that's cross-variant immunity is also declining with every new variant. So right now we have about 50% in our models assuming that if you've been infected by a previous variant, which is a non-escape variant, your protection goes down to 50% in case Delta or any new escape variant.
So if you're wondering why you might need a COVID vaccine after you've been infected, that might be a reason. We're just days away from the start of the new school year, and that also has Dr. Mokdad and the team at IHME worried because they're working under CDC guidelines created before the Delta variant.
CDC said for kids in school, 3 feet apart from each other is safe. I don't believe, and we don't believe, that 3 feet is sufficient to prevent the Delta variant and its spread. And remember, all kids under the age of 12 are not vaccinated. The other concern we have about schools is lunchtime or meal time. Where we opened the school in April, we didn't have a meal time. So our experience at that time should not be used as an excuse to do what we did last time and worked for us simply because we have Delta variant and we didn't have a big lunch or lunch at schools. And we had a cohort of students. We didn't have full class capacity.
And let's not forget, we still have Sounders, Storm, and Mariners games going with the Seahawks and Kraken coming soon. And Mokdad says we've already seen an example of COVID spreading from an outdoor concert.
I would say we need to slow down a little bit, especially in our state, because we have done a very good job so far in controlling the virus. And we're paying a price for our success story in a way. If you compare us to a state, for example, like Florida, that didn't do a good job as we did, or Texas, in terms of preventing infection and protecting our people, they're way ahead of us in terms of immunity because they let the virus infect a lot of their people. We didn't do this in Washington, but still we have a large segment of our population that's still susceptible to Delta, and we need to be very careful.
And like Mokdad has said many times before, that means keeping your distance, wearing a good mask, and getting your COVID shots. Ryan Harris, KOMO News.
Well, the recent jump in COVID-19 cases in Washington state, with the highest number of hospitalized patients since the pandemic started, has led Gig Harbor to cancel any remaining summer events. The city says it has canceled the 2021 Summer Sounds at Scansey and Movies in the Park out of the abundance of caution amid the rising case numbers in Pierce County. This all takes effect starting August 24th.
KOMO News time, 3:10. It's a Blue Friday in the Emerald City. 12s get to watch a Seahawks home game tomorrow night. More from KOMO's Bill Swartz at the Beacon Plumbing Sports Desk.
Haven't been able to say that since 2019, Rick and Elisa, because of the pandemic. No Hawks fans were allowed at Lumen last season, but current state and health guidelines allow for a full stadium tomorrow night when Seattle play the Denver Broncos in preseason action. We'll have more on that topic 15 minutes away on KOMO News Radio. Pete Carroll saying today center Ethan Posick will not play as he deals with a hamstring injury. Tight end Gerald Everett worked out today after an undisclosed Thursday injury, and Russell Wilson has loved throwing to this new target.
He keeps getting open on second and third down. He just finds a way to make plays. He's been exceptional for us, and I got great confidence in him, what he's doing.
The Mariners take a 3-game sweep over the Rangers into Houston for a big weekend series against the Astros. Seattle's only 3 games back in the wild card and have Yusei Kikuchi on the mound for tonight's opening game. Washington State and Northwest champion Eastlake of Sammamish plays Abilene, Texas in round 1 of the Little League Baseball World Series tonight. And round 1 of golf's Boeing Classic is underway at Snoqualmie Ridge. Billy Mayfair made the turn at 4 under par. Sports at 10 and 40 after the hour. Bill Swartz Sports, KOMO News.
KOMO News Time 3:11, and a KOMO News exclusive now about a UW football alum recently who died of COVID-19. Now, his parents are urging everyone who is able to get vaccinated to get their shots. More from KOMO's Denise Whitaker.
Lamar Mitchell loved sports from an early age.
He had about 35 different scholarship offers to a university for his football.
And he chose the University of Washington of all the offers he had?
Well, no.
Okay.
He chose University UCLA, and we chose University of Washington.
A wise choice for this wide receiver, a member of the UW's 91 Rose Bowl championship team. Staying strong and healthy into his 50s, his sudden death is a shock.
It's difficult, Denise. Yeah. It's really difficult.
Mitchell, a nurse in mental health, working long hours, even some double shifts, still drove an hour to see his mom for her birthday.
And as we progressed through the day, he told me he didn't feel very well, but he had to go back to work that night.
When Sandra Howell called the next day to check in on him, her son said he was monitoring his pulse and oxygen levels.
That's the first thing we come to our mind nowadays is, are you infected?
Sandra and her husband, Walt, immediately drove 65 miles to see him.
And that was the last time we got a chance to see him.
Mitchell tested positive for COVID-19 July 30th, admitted to the hospital August 2nd. 1 week later, doctors put him on a ventilator. The next day, in kidney failure, they started dialysis. The next morning, he passed while Walt and Sandra sat in traffic, desperate to get there in time.
When you lose a child, it is so devastating.
Sandra tells me she assumed her son was vaccinated because he worked in healthcare, but after his death, she learned he was not. She and Walt are now on a crusade using their son's death to urge others to get vaccinated.
And that's Denise Whitaker reporting.
Some teachers in our state are speaking out against the mandate to get the COVID-19 vaccine. KOMO's Carlene Johnson reports.
Jennifer Walther has spent 35 years as a teacher, the last 4 years in Moses Lake teaching 10th grade English and AP classes. But she does not have any intention of getting the COVID-19 vaccine, despite being told she'll lose her job otherwise.
So they're just going to let go of somebody who has 150 students and just say, oh, well, absorb that. It doesn't make any sense to me, but people keep telling me, Jennifer, it doesn't matter about the kids. It's about their power.
All K through 12 teachers and staff in the state, including public, private, and charter school employees, could be fired if they're not willing to receive the vaccine. Governor Inslee issued that order this week, which also applies to higher education and most child care facilities in the state. Carlene Johnson, KOMO News.
KOMO News Time 3:14.
And here's Marina Rockinger with an update on traffic every 10 minutes on the fours from the Dubin Law Group Traffic Center.
Well, we do have slowdowns southbound I-5 that are pretty tough from Northgate, bumper to bumper down to the Convention Center in Seattle. Southbound 405, that's solid too from 520 through Bellevue and continues to be slow rather to 44th. Northbound I-5 getting into Everett and through Everett, that slowdown now begins at 112th and it will not let up until you're past the Snohomish River Bridge. Northbound Highway 9 just south of 1st Street, that's milepost number 9 on Highway 9. There it looks like there's something blocking a lane. We have it tough southbound I-5 from Highway 18 into Fife. Both directions of I-5 in Tacoma are solid between the Puyallup River and Highway 16. Southbound 167, a slow go from Highway 18 through Ellingson, and again from 24th into Puyallup. And been watching the ferry status for Edmonds Kingston. The Edmonds terminal status is now a 3-hour wait for drivers. Next, KOMO traffic at 3:24.
Okay, thanks for the heads up. Important as we go into the weekend. Speaking of which, the weather is going to be kind of what we're seeing right now. Mainly cloudy, even a chance of some morning sprinkles again tomorrow with a high a tad warmer. Expect low 70s, but then Sunday back to the mid 60s. Again, some spotty showers under mostly cloudy skies. And our temperature in downtown Seattle now 64. SeaTac Airport 63.
Stay connected. Stay informed. The Northwest's only 24-hour news station. KOMO News 1000, FM 97.7.
You made it to Friday. Thank you for joining us on the KOMO Afternoon News with Elisa Jaffe. I'm Rick Van Cise, and our editor is Bill O'Neill.
Pentagon officials say over 18,000 people have been pulled from Afghanistan since the end of July. Army Major General Hank Taylor told reporters today that evacuations at the Kabul airport have resumed. They were stalled for several hours due to a backlog at an airfield in Qatar.
Going to the Washington State Fair, doing the Puyallup during the pandemic will go on as planned, but fair goers will be encouraged to mask up outdoors, though no check of vaccination status is planned.
Troubling information about the pandemic. The death toll from COVID-19 in the U.S. has risen to 625,000 lives lost. That's according to data from Johns Hopkins University.
COVID-19 infections are more rampant today than they were before the vaccine was available.
That's Kansas Governor Laura Kelly today, saying that her state's healthcare system is being stretched to the max. ABC's Andy Field joining us on the KOMO Newsline. And Andy, anxiety in this country over COVID-19 is raging right along with the Delta variant. And you're hearing things about what's going on in Alabama right now.
Well, let's start with Alabama because this is extraordinary. There is a town in Alabama that has declared a COVID emergency, not because of COVID, although they're having a pretty tough time. They've kind of run out of beds there, Cullman, Alabama, but they still have enough doctors and nurses and barely enough hospital capacity to deal with the COVID patients there, where there is a very high unvaccinated rate. But the reason they're declaring a COVID emergency is Donald Trump. He is holding a rally there this weekend. They expect 20,000 people, and usually those hospital doctors and nurses are set free to go help and make sure that those 20,000 people, if they have emergencies, are taken care of. They can't spare those people. So the city had to declare a COVID emergency because of the Donald Trump rally so that they could pay and authorize money for outside people to come in and make sure that those people at the rally are okay.
And a lot of people right now are trying to get those test kits too, Andy, and they're not as easy to find these days.
No, it's because people basically had stopped testing once they had gotten the COVID vaccine. They thought, well, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm not going to get COVID, so why do I need to test for it? So a lot of these testing sites had closed. The test kits on the shelves in many stores were collecting dust. And then suddenly, because of this new Delta variant, there's a giant interest in these tests. CVS and Walgreens and others are having a hard time keeping them in stock. And Abbott, one of the big makers of these tests, is having to ramp up production again for this. What's interesting is that a lot of sites where you can do these drive-through testing, I have one not too far from my home in suburban Washington, D.C., and that had closed down. It was an open tent where you could drive up, get a swab, get something stuck up your nose, and find out pretty quickly if you had COVID. That had closed down several months ago. I just drove by there today. It's open again. The Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs did a poll and found that 41% of Americans are extremely or very worried about themselves or their families being infected. That is almost double the number who were fearful of this back in June. You remember back in June, most of the country had already, or at least the people who wanted to get vaccines had already gotten vaccines and were feeling pretty good about the fact that, well, I've got protection against COVID and now we can kind of get back to normal. And then we had the Delta variant. And now those same people polled. This is the thing that really goes against what you're hearing in the political areas, especially in Republican states. They say a majority of Americans want vaccination mandates for anyone who attends movies, sports, concerts, crowded events. If you travel by airplane, workers in hospitals, restaurants, stores, government offices, basically everywhere, they want a mandate for these vaccines. And you're seeing more and more companies insisting on doing this, basically bucking the trend in primarily Republican states that are saying, no, we don't want any mandate.
ABC's Andy Field joining us from D.C. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
KOMO News Time 3:20. All right. While Wall Street did a little better today, let's get the latest numbers in your KOMO Propel Insurance Money Update. Here is Frank Miller.
Well, stocks rebounded today to finish out the week higher. The Dow up around 225, the S&P up 35, the NASDAQ up 172. The tech sector pushing the NASDAQ well into the green. Software stocks in general seeing a particularly strong upward move. Shares of Microsoft up over 2.5% today after the company announced what it called a substantive price increase for its Office application suite. The price increases will vary from 9 to 25% depending on the version of the software. Increases will go into effect in 6 months. There won't be any changes, though, for education or consumer editions of the software. Meanwhile, shares of Foot Locker were up 7% after its earnings report crushed expectations. And travel restrictions between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada are being extended yet again. The Department of Homeland Security says non-essential travel will remain restricted through at least September 21st. That's your Money Now. I'm Frank Miller, KOMO News.
Money News on KOMO at 20 and 50 past the hour. Traffic and weather coming up. And then tomorrow, real fans and real football games. Will it last into the fall? More from Bill Swartz.
From the White House to the State House and politics affecting your neighborhood. Listen to KOMO's Politicast podcast with Jeff Pogela. Stay connected. Stay informed with Politicast. Go to KOMOnews.com/podcasts.
Hi,